At 25, I honestly thought my life was finally settling into a calm rhythm. I had a stable job, a small apartment that didn't smell like the previous tenant's cigarettes, and a routine that kept me too busy to get sucked into my family's constant drama. But little did I know, everything was about to explode because of one person, my older sister, AmITheA. Growing up, she was always the golden child, the pretty one, the one who supposedly had it all together, even though half of her life was held together with lies, secrets, and emotional manipulation. She married young, at 21, to this quiet, respectful guy named Hasib, and from the outside it looked like a picture-perfect marriage. But inside, anyone with half a brain could see it was falling apart. She treated him like a personal assistant, blamed him for everything that went wrong in her life, and ran crying to my parents every time he didn't obey her every command. Still, they worshipped her like she was some delicate porcelain doll.
Me?
I was the spare child, the one expected to help but never complain, the one who got lectures instead of sympathy, the one who knew the family's truth but stayed silent because silence was safer than honesty. I never got involved in their marital issues. I never took sides. I barely visited because every time I stepped into that house, it felt like walking into a courtroom where I was the only defendant. But all the distance and all the silence in the world couldn't have prepared me for what happened the week everything fell apart. It started with a phone call from my mother, actually not even a call, more like a verbal attack disguised as one. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, when my phone vibrated nonstop. I answered thinking it must be urgent, but instead of a greeting, I got, "What did you say to Hasib?" No context. No explanation. Just that raw accusation, dripping with disappointment and anger, like she had already decided my guilt before hearing a single detail. I was confused, stunned, and honestly too tired to deal with whatever fantasy my sister had spun this time. I told her I hadn't spoken to him in months, and that's when she went completely silent. Not the normal thinking silence, but the heavy, loaded kind that tells you something big is coming. She finally exhaled sharply and said, "AmITheA told us everything. She said you're the reason her marriage is breaking. She said you told Hasib things about her, things that destroyed their trust." I swear, for a whole 3 seconds my brain stopped working. I sat on my couch, staring at my reflection in the blank TV screen, trying to process what I had just heard. My sister had blamed me, for destroying her marriage. Her marriage that had been cracking for years because of her own insecurities, lies, and temper. Her marriage that I had stayed far away from because I knew she would twist any involvement into a weapon. And now she had found the perfect scapegoat, the sibling who wasn't there to defend himself. I asked my mom what exactly AmITheA claimed I said, but she cut me off with her classic emotional lines. "We trusted you. How could you betray your own sister?" She cried for hours. "Do you know how much pain she's in? You've ruined everything." It felt like the walls of the room were shrinking around me. I could literally feel the heat rising under my skin. I hadn't ruined anything. I hadn't even been present in their life. But in my family, logic was optional, and blaming me was always the convenient solution. I hung up, not because I wanted to, but because the conversation was spiraling into a direction where no truth could break through their blind loyalty to my sister. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I needed to understand what story she had built this time. But the truth came crashing into my life the very next day, loud, humiliating, and in the most public way possible. I was at work, in the middle of a meeting, when HR knocked on the conference room door and asked to speak to me privately. My stomach dropped instantly. HR never calls you unless something serious is happening. I followed them out with shaky hands, every worst-case scenario flashing through my head, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what they showed me. A long, emotional email from my sister sent to my workplace. An email accusing me of interfering in her marriage, spreading false rumors, manipulating her husband, and destroying her reputation. She even wrote that I had mental instability issues that my workplace should be aware of. Every sentence felt like a dagger twisting deeper. My heart was racing so fast it felt like it was vibrating. HR wasn't angry. They were concerned. But concerned in the way you look at someone who might explode or break into tears. I had to stand there, stiff as a statue, and calmly explain that my sister had a long history of emotional manipulation and that I had absolutely nothing to do with her marital problems. I even offered to show messages proving I hadn't interacted with her or her husband at all. They listened and told me to take the next few days off to sort things out. Which basically meant, we don't know if you're telling the truth or she is, but we don't want the drama here. I walked out of the office numb. I didn't even know where I was going. I just walked until my feet hurt. I kept replaying everything. My mom's accusatory voice, my sister's lies, HR's expression, the humiliation of having my personal family drama exposed at work. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt like I was living someone else's nightmare. I expected a text or call from my family asking to hear my side. I expected anyone to say, maybe we should talk. Instead, when I opened the family WhatsApp group, I felt my entire body go cold. Messages, dozens of them. And almost all of them were about me. Or rather, against me. Harsh words. Blind blame. Relatives calling me shameless, jealous, toxic. Not a single person defending me. Not even one. And then, the final blow, a message from my father. We don't want to see you until you apologize to your sister. Apologize. For something I didn't do. For a lie I didn't create. For a disaster I wasn't part of. I stared at that message, my hands trembling, my throat tight, and in that moment I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't miscommunication. This was my sister destroying my life to save her own image. And my family? They had handed her the match and the gasoline. And just like that, my world burned. I woke up the next morning feeling like someone had pressed restart on a nightmare that refused to end, except this time it got worse the moment I checked my phone. Overnight, my sister had escalated her performance from victim to tragic heroine, uploading a long emotional post on Facebook about how her own sibling betrayed her, ruined her marriage, and exposed her private life out of jealousy. She didn't mention my name directly, of course. She used those crafty, indirect lines like, some people can't stand seeing others happy, and I trusted someone who stabbed me in the back. But everyone knew. Everyone. Because the comments were full of people saying, stay strong, AmITheA, we all know who you mean, and your sibling should be ashamed. The worst part? My parents had commented too, with my father writing, we're always with you, Beta, and my mother saying, no one deserves the pain you're going through. Reading those comments felt like swallowing broken glass. I was being publicly crucified for something I hadn't even done, while the people who raised me joined in like I was some stranger who had wandered into their lives instead of their own child. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just stared at the screen until the words blurred. My hands were shaking with a mixture of fury, helplessness, and disbelief. Because deep down, I knew my sister wasn't doing this out of pain. She was doing it to distract everyone from the real reason her marriage was falling apart. AmITheA hated accountability. She always had. She always needed someone to blame. Her teachers, her friends, her husband, and now me. But this time she had gone too far. She had dragged my job, my reputation, and my dignity through the mud just to save face. And as if the universe wanted to make sure I didn't get one moment to breathe, there was a knock on my apartment door around noon. For a second, I froze, afraid it might be my parents or some relative here to confront me. But when I opened the door, it wasn't them. It was Hasib, my sister's husband. And the second I saw his face, I knew things were worse than I imagined. He looked exhausted, eyes red, hair messy, shirt wrinkled like he had been up all night. He stood there silently for a moment before saying, "Can I come in? Please." I stepped aside without asking anything. He walked in slowly, like a man carrying the weight of an entire collapsing life. We sat down on opposite ends of the couch, and for a long moment, he just held his forehead in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was so tired that it barely sounded like him. "I don't know what to do anymore," he whispered. "Your sister, she's telling everyone I left her because of you." My heart sank. She was blaming him and me at the same time? I asked him what exactly she had told him, and that's when he let out a humorless laugh. She said you told me she was cheating. She said you confessed to me that she was hiding messages from me. She said you poisoned my mind against her. I stared at him, speechless. She had fabricated full conversations, things that had never happened, messages that had never been exchanged, lies stacked on lies like she was building a skyscraper of manipulation. I told him I hadn't talked to her in weeks, hadn't spoken to him in months, and had absolutely no idea what was going on between them. He nodded slowly, like he had already expected that answer. I knew, he said. I knew she was lying. You've never been involved in our arguments. You always avoided coming over because you didn't want to get dragged into anything. But she kept insisting.
She cried.
She broke things. She blamed me for listening to you. She said you destroyed her home. His voice cracked on the last sentence. And then he told me the truth, something that made my blood run cold. They were divorcing. Not because of me. Not because of rumors. But because he had finally reached a breaking point after years of emotional manipulation, explosive fights, mental pressure, and constant accusations. He told me she had been treating him like an enemy for months, accusing him of cheating on her with coworkers, with friends, with random strangers. Nothing he said was ever enough. Nothing he did was ever right. And the night before she told my parents her lie about me, she had screamed at him for hours, throwing dishes, tearing photos, threatening to harm herself, until he finally said he needed space. That was all it took. That one moment of honesty. She immediately created a new narrative. He left me because of my brother. It was the perfect cover story for her, a way to protect her image by sacrificing mine. Hasib leaned back, rubbing his eyes. I didn't know she would go this far, he whispered. I didn't know she'd bring you into this. But now your parents hate you. Your relatives think you destroyed our home. Your workplace contacted me asking for context. My chest tightened painfully. My workplace had contacted him? That meant HR believed the situation might be real enough to verify. Asked him what he told them, and he said, I told them the truth. That you had nothing to do with it. That your sister is not mentally stable right now. But I don't know if that's enough. I exhaled slowly. A small part of me felt relief that at least someone finally was defending me. But another part of me felt a deep, burning anger. Why did I have to be dragged into this at all? Why did my family throw me under the bus without asking one single question? Why was it so easy for them to believe the worst about me? Hasib apologized repeatedly, saying he never wanted any of this to happen. But I wasn't angry at him. I told him what I had been too afraid to admit until now. My parents will always choose her, no matter what she does. They'll never believe me.
He didn't argue.
He knew it was true. He stayed for about an hour, explaining everything he had been holding inside for years. His frustrations, his regrets, his constant attempts to fix a marriage that had been rotting from the inside. By the time he left, I felt drained. Not because of him, but because of the reality he confirmed. My sister wasn't going to stop. She was doubling down on her lies, building a version of events where I was the villain, and she was the innocent wife whose marriage was stolen by her own sibling. And the worst part? My parents were eating it up like it was gospel. That afternoon, my mother called again, this time not to question me, but to scold me like I was still a child. She yelled for 10 minutes straight about how I had broken the family, how I had shattered her trust, how I was so jealous of AmITheA's life that I ruined it. I tried to speak. I tried to explain. But every time I said a single word, she talked over me, crying dramatically like I had committed some unspeakable crime. Then she said something that made my blood boil. Your sister is so heartbroken, she can't even breathe properly. As if I had done something to her. As if I was the reason she was collapsing under the weight of her own lies. I finally snapped and said, Ask Hasib. Ask him what really happened. Silence. Sharp, heavy silence on the other end. And then, with a tone dripping in disappointment, she said, Don't drag him into this. He already told us what you did. That's when I realized my sister had lied to them about his version of events too. She had twisted everything, even the truth he told them, reshaping it until it fit her victim narrative. After the call, my father sent me a voice note. Not a message. A voice note. As if he couldn't even be bothered to type. In his cold, authoritative tone, he said, "Stay away from this family until you're ready to confess." Confess. To a crime I never committed. To a lie someone else invented. To a storyline where I didn't even get a speaking role before being condemned. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, phone silent, reputation shattered, job unsure, and family gone. And as the sun disappeared behind the buildings, I felt something shift inside me. I was done being the scapegoat. I was done being silent. I was done letting them ruin my life while I quietly endured it. If my sister wanted to rewrite the truth, then fine. But she had no idea I had something that could burn her entire lie to ashes. And I was finally ready to use it. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. My mind kept replaying every accusation, every message, every moment my family turned their backs on me without hesitation, and somewhere between 4 a.m. and sunrise, a cold clarity settled inside me, a kind I had never felt before. My whole life, I had swallowed abuse, manipulation, emotional blackmail, and the endless comparisons that always ended with my sister on a pedestal and me in the dirt. But this time, they had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. They had attacked my character, my job, my mental stability, and my integrity, all because my sister needed a shield to hide behind. I knew I couldn't continue just absorbing their damage. I needed to gather my own ammunition, not out of revenge, but out of survival. And the truth? I had it. I always had it. Because months earlier, long before this chaos erupted, AmITheA had accidentally exposed herself without realizing it. I remembered a day when she had come to my apartment unannounced, crying hysterically because she and Hasib had gotten into a fight over some messages on her phone. She had dropped onto my couch, rambling about how he never trusts her, how he checks her phone like a psycho, and how she was allowed to talk to anyone she wants. I had listened quietly, just like I always did, because reasoning with her was like reasoning with a storm. You just waited for it to pass. But while she was ranting, she had thrown her phone onto my couch and gone to the bathroom to wash her face, leaving the screen lit. I wasn't snooping. The messages were right there, open, glowing, impossible to ignore. Messages with a man who definitely wasn't her husband. Flirty, emotional, secretive. She had been cheating. Not once. Not accidentally. Consistently. And stupidly. I had locked the screen, pretended not to see anything, and when she came back, she kept ranting about Hasib's trust issues, not realizing she had just handed me the truth on a silver platter. I never told anyone. Not Hasib. Not my parents. Not even her. Because I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to be dragged into the toxic hurricane of her marriage. But now? Now she was burning my life to save her image, and she had no idea I held the match that could burn everything she had built. I didn't plan to use it, not yet. Evidence isn't something you throw wildly. It's something you drop at the precise moment the truth needs to shatter the room. And that moment was coming. Fast. That morning, around 9 a.m., my phone rang again. It was Hasib. His voice was heavy but urgent. "I need to talk to you," he said. I told him to come over, assuming he wanted to discuss the divorce or the lies she had told. But when he arrived, he was holding something I didn't expect, his phone, open to screenshots. Screenshots of conversations between my sister and my parents. Conversations where she was feeding them twisted stories about me, crafting detailed lies about fake conversations she claimed I had with her husband, even altering timestamps to make it look like I had called him late at night. She had created a whole alternate universe where I was the villain. But the most shocking part wasn't what she said about me, it was what she said about him. She had painted him as abusive, controlling, mentally unstable, and dangerous, just to ensure my parents would stay on her side. She wasn't just destroying my relationship with them. She was destroying his too. I read each message slowly, the anger building like fire under my skin. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't emotional panic. This was calculated manipulation. AmITheA had always been dramatic, but this This was psychological warfare. And she was playing it with the confidence of someone who believed no one would ever expose her lies. Hasib sighed deeply. I didn't want to show you this, but you need to know how far she's going. I thanked him, and in that moment, something shifted between us, an unspoken alliance. Not against her, but against the devastation she was causing. After he left, I stared at the screenshots for a long time, and with every passing second, I felt more certain. I needed to defend myself, not to get revenge, not to ruin her marriage further, because it was already ruined long before I entered the picture, but because I wasn't going to allow her lies to cost me my job, my future, or my dignity. And that meant confronting the people who had condemned me without a trial. My parents. I didn't go to their house. I wasn't stupid enough to walk into their space where they could gang up on me. Instead, I created a group call. I added my mom, my dad, and though it killed me to do it, AmITheA. The moment the call connected, the tension was so thick, I could practically taste it. My mother immediately started crying loudly, dramatically, like she was auditioning for a tragic TV drama. My father's tone was cold, stiff, ready to judge. And AmITheA? She stayed silent. Silent like someone who knows the lie she crafted is about to be tested. I didn't give them time to start. I spoke first.
Calm. Clear.
Controlled. Before anyone says anything, I want all of you to listen, I said. I want you to hear the truth. Not the version AmITheA told you, but what actually happened. My mom sniffled. My dad let out a long, annoyed sigh. And my sister finally spoke, her voice trembling with performative fragility. I don't want to argue, she murmured. This has already hurt me enough. I almost laughed. Hurt her? She had nearly destroyed my job, my reputation, my standing in the family. But I ignored her theatrics and continued. Yesterday, HR called me. Because someone, I paused, letting the weight of the word hang, sent them a long emotional email filled with lies about me. Lies that have put my job at risk. My mother gasped like she didn't already know. My father said, your sister was emotional. She didn't mean, she sent it on purpose. I cut in sharply. She wrote it, rewrote it, and then sent it to ruin me. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable, tense. I could feel my sister's panic through the phone. My father cleared his throat. AmITheA told us you influenced Hasib to leave her. That you told him things. I told him nothing. I snapped. And you would have known that if you'd asked me even once instead of believing her blindly. My mother jumped in, voice shaky. Your sister was crying. She said you betrayed her. She said, she lied. I said, my voice cold, steady. She lied because she didn't want to admit the real reason her marriage is ending. A trembling breath came through the microphone. AmITheA. My father suddenly sounded defensive. What real reason? I paused. This was the moment. The line between exposing the truth and destroying her completely. And even now, even after everything she did, I wasn't cruel enough to throw her affair in their faces. Not yet. But I had to give them a hint of reality. Her marriage didn't end because of me, I said quietly. It ended because of things she doesn't want to admit, things she's hiding from everyone, including you. My mother whispered, what things? My sister's breath hitched. Don't, she said softly, panic finally breaking through her fake calm. Don't you dare bring up my private life. Private life. Interesting choice of words for someone who had made a public spectacle out of mine. My father raised his voice. If you know something, say it clearly. I let his demand hang in the air for a few seconds before answering. I'll say this much. I'm not the reason Hasib left. And he told me everything. Everything. My sister inhaled sharply, like someone drowning. My parents fell silent. And in that heavy silence, the truth, unstated but unmistakable, hung over all of them. They understood. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to realize they had backed the wrong person. Enough to feel the first crack in the fantasy my sister had built. Before they could speak again, I ended the call. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just decisively. because I knew what was coming next. My sister wasn't going to sit quietly.
She was going to panic.
She was going to lash out. She was going to try to save her lie by any means necessary. And she did. Within an hour. Through something that changed everything. But that comes next. The moment I ended the call, I expected silence. Maybe a few hours of tense waiting, maybe a message from my parents demanding an explanation, maybe even a half-hearted attempt from my sister to regain control of the situation. But what I didn't expect was the violent storm she unleashed within minutes. A storm so destructive that for a second I wondered if she had planned this meltdown long before I even confronted her. At exactly 11:14 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications, calls, messages, voice notes, all from a group that hadn't been active in years. The family group chat, the one my parents used only for Eid greetings and birthday wishes. But this time, the chat wasn't wholesome. It was a battlefield, and my sister was firing the first shot. She had sent a long paragraph, longer than anything she had ever written in her life, filled with heart-wrenching lines like, "I can't believe my own brother is blackmailing me," and "he threatened to destroy me if I didn't admit lies he made up," and "I'm scared of what he'll expose because he's manipulating my husband against me." She even added a voice note where she cried so convincingly it would have fooled anyone who didn't know how many times she had practiced fake tears in the mirror since childhood. She sobbed, screamed, begged, gasped, performing like her life depended on it. And in a way, maybe it did. Because for the first time, she had felt her power slipping. The leash she held around my parents' necks was loosening. The story she had woven so carefully was unraveling. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing control. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with my mother calling. I didn't answer. Then my father.
Ignored.
Then my sister, calling non-stop like a siren. Declined every time. The voice notes kept coming, long, chaotic, filled with her shouting. "Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you? Just leave my marriage alone."
I didn't respond.
Not out of fear, out of strategy. I knew silence would suffocate her far more than any words I could say. And I was right. Because 10 minutes later, the storm escalated into something dangerous. A post appeared on Facebook.
Public.
Emotional. Manipulative. Written by her. "If anything happens to me today, I want everyone to know my sibling is responsible. I can't take the pressure anymore. I'm tired of being blamed and blackmailed." It was a digital suicide note without the actual threat. A dramatic plea for sympathy. A calculated attempt to weaponize public pity. And it worked. Within minutes, relatives, neighbors, old classmates, everyone flooded her comments with support. "Stay strong. We are with you. Your brother is toxic. Cut him out completely." I watched it happen in real time, my name not written but implied in every word like a ghost everyone wanted to attack. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from sheer disbelief at how boldly she was rewriting reality. She wasn't just lying. She was constructing an entire alternate universe where she was the tragic heroine and I was the villain lurking in the shadows. But the dangerous part wasn't the post itself. It was what came after. My manager called. Not HR. My manager. A direct call. A tone filled with concern, confusion, and disappointment.
"We need to talk," he said. "Now." I felt something inside me sink.
I could lose everything. My job, my stability, my future, because of a lie my sister invented to protect herself. I explained everything as calmly as I could. The lies, the accusations, the manipulation. I told him I had proof, screenshots, evidence. He listened quietly and after a long pause said, "Send it to me." For the first time since the chaos began, I felt a flicker of hope. Someone was willing to look at facts, not drama. I compiled everything, messages from Hasib, proof of her false claims, screenshots of her fabricated timelines, even her contradictory statements. I sent all of it. 10 minutes later, he replied, "Thank you. We'll handle it internally. For now, take the day off." I breathed for the first time in hours. But I knew the real war wasn't at work. It was at home. Because the moment I put my phone down, it rang again, this time from an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Are you proud of yourself?" My father's voice thundered through the speaker. He didn't even greet me, didn't even ask if I was okay. Just rage. Blind, misdirected rage. "Your sister is crying," he shouted. "She says you threatened her, that you're trying to break her marriage out of jealousy. What kind of son are you?" I didn't raise my voice. "Did you ask her why I would threaten her? Did you ask for proof?" "She's crying," he repeated, as if tears were enough evidence to convict me. "She's your sister." I felt something snap inside me, a string that had been stretched my whole life. "And I'm your son," I said quietly. "Or does that not matter?" Silence. Heavy. Awkward. Thick. For the first time, maybe ever, he didn't have a quick comeback. So I continued. "I have never interfered in her marriage. But she has dragged mine, my job, my reputation, into her mess. And you believed her, without a single question." My father tried to interrupt, but I didn't let him. "Ask Hasib," I said firmly. "Call him. Right now. Ask him why the marriage is ending. Ask him what she lied about." Another silence. My father's voice dropped to a quieter, more uncertain tone. "Your sister said he's lying to ruin her life." Of course she did. She had painted him as a villain too. Anyone she couldn't control automatically became the enemy in her story. "If you want the truth," I said, "call him. If you don't want the truth, keep believing her lies." Then I ended the call. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was necessary. Because I knew something they didn't know. Hasib wasn't staying silent anymore. And I realized that fully an hour later when he showed up at my door again, this time furious, determined, holding something that made my stomach drop. A USB drive. He walked in without waiting for permission, pacing like a man ready to detonate everything. "I'm done covering for her," he said. "Done protecting her. You didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve this." I asked him what was on the USB. His jaw tightened. Recordings. My heart stopped for a moment. Recordings of what? He met my eyes. Of her admitting everything. The cheating. The lies. The manipulation. Even the message she sent to your job. I felt the room tilt. Why do you have this?" He exhaled shakily. "Because I knew one day she would try to destroy me too. I recorded everything months ago." My mind spun, trying to process it. He handed me the USB. "Use it if you need to," he said. "Because she's crossing lines now. She won't stop until you have nothing left." And then he left. Just like that. Leaving me holding the single piece of evidence that could collapse my sister's entire castle of lies. I stared at the USB for a long time, feeling the weight of what it meant. Not just for me, but for my family, for her, for everything. I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to humiliate her. But she had pushed me into a corner, and corners have sharp edges. And the moment I finally plugged the USB into my laptop and listened to the first recording, everything changed.